Hey guys, it's Angie with Bridal Boss. So today we're talking about part 2 of etiquette. Now I know when I think of etiquette, and many of you might be thinking this too, that you're thinking, okay, am I using the right fork for eating my salad plate, or is this the fork for my entree? That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about how a bride should hold herself when she goes in to talk to vendors. Because your look, the way you talk, the way you handle yourself is going to dictate what happens and what you get for your wedding. One of the things I think about when going in and talking to these wedding vendors is how you hold yourself in your conversation. You need to be able to look like you're really listening. You make eye contact, you're listening to them, you're looking them in the eyes. You might even be prepared in bringing an iPad or a phone, or if you're old school like me sometimes, bringing a piece of paper, a pad of paper, and a pencil to take down and jot down any notes. You want to be sure to get there and arrive with questions already ready to ask those vendors some, the things that you might want to know. Okay, well, what kind of cakes do you make? What's all the different kind of food you make? Things like that you want to already have in hand when you're meeting with those vendors. So I always like to use a personal example, and a really wonderful thing that happened in my wedding is when we went to go try out cake. We went to a couple of places to try different types of cakes, and usually when they bring you out trying cakes, I just want to tell you ahead of time, be sure to not eat anything, because they're going to bring you several plates of cakes. And if you've already eaten or you're full, you're not going to feel like trying these cakes, and you want to have a fresh, clean palate to try the different types of cakes. I also want to recommend going to different bakeries, different people that are making the cakes. Don't just settle on one. Go and try different ones just to kind of get an idea of what they all taste like. And I remember going to one place, and it was already set up, to have samplings of cakes. They had the cakes brought out to us, and we were all trying the different ones and trying to decide which one we wanted. And again, we had a budget. It was a very, very low budget at that time. I got married very, very young, and we only had a certain amount of money to pay for the cakes. Well, the prices that they were giving us were like outrageous, and I just was thinking, oh my gosh, is all our money going to go for our cake for our wedding, or what? And so I know at that time I was just overwhelmed. I couldn't believe how much just the cakes were. So we tried these cakes at this one place, went home, and a friend of mine, actually I believe it was our pastor's wife, told me about this awesome chef that made amazing food. And she's like, you know what? I think I'm gonna give you his number. And he makes amazing cakes. He's so good. And he even cooked for the president. And we were like, oh my gosh, okay, well, let's go meet with him. So she gave us his address. He doesn't do, normal appointments. So we had to call, arrange a time to meet with him at this private place that wasn't even marked. Went in and sat with him and just explained to him our situation, how much we wanted to spend on our cake. And he sat down. So this is a good example of personal relationship and just being honest from the beginning and letting him know, this is my story, this is where we're at, this is how much I have, to spend on our cakes. Anyway, we sat with him, and he was a big football guy. He didn't even look like a chef. It was so funny. And he brings out a plate. I think there was like 5 different cakes on there. And we sit with them, and it's amazing. These cakes are like, I couldn't even explain to you how awesome and amazing these cakes were. So we picked out, okay, for the groom's cake, we wanted something like chocolatey with something like kind of like this. And then for the bride's cake, this white cake with maybe some fruit in the middle would be awesome. And he said, okay, tell me again how much, you want to spend. So we told him how much we wanted to spend. And he's like, this isn't normally what I do, but I'm going to tell you what. I'm going to put together your cakes for your price. And he said, and I'm going to make them amazing. And I was just overwhelmed. I could not believe it. And to be honest, that was just God's favor all over it. So come our wedding day, we talked to him a couple of times and told him, kind of the colors that we wanted. This was the most amazing cake I had ever seen. And we had a lot of people. We probably had about 800 people at our wedding. And he made this 5-tier cake, made the actual flowers himself, And he had gotten up really early that day. It was beautiful. And then the groom's cake was so good. I mean, it was gone within like the first 10 minutes of our reception. And people still to this day, I've been married for 23 years, still to this day tell us our cake was memorable, and they could not believe how awesome that cake was. And it's all because of our relationship, you know, and just being honest with him and being upfront. And I believe it was God's favor too that got us the best deal that we could have ever gotten. I'll tell you one last thing. When we asked him afterwards, you know, people were like, what was that cake? What was it called? And we asked him, he said, you know what? I made it up. He said, I'd never made a cake like that before for the groom's cake, because it was chocolate with like some kind of ganache in it, and it had like this crunchy bottom, and it had like gold leafing on top. It was beautiful. He said, and he's never made it since. So he said, I just started putting together things that you said. You wanted chocolate covered strawberries. You wanted like a chocolate glaze and all these different recipes and ingredients in it. And he made it so good, and it was special. That's something that was set apart just for us, and that he made special just for us. It was amazing. And I just love sharing that story because it's just an example of God's favor. Not being stressed out over something that you don't think you can afford, but realizing, you know what, it's going to work out. There's going to be a way that you're going to get something maybe even better than you expected that comes out of this special day. Anyway, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time on Bridal Boss.